my self-worth and my sense of self-worth was tied up to, apart from all the societal things where people tell you have to be beautiful and thin, and we had all that going on. But on the academic side, it felt like the world also told me I had to be productive to be worth anything or valuable.
The sweetest sentence is, I value myself. It should be a simple thing, right? And yet so many of us struggle with people pleasing and overworking and tying our productivity to our worth, tying how much money we make to our worth.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Dr. Becc is a mindset coach and medical doctor who specialises in liberating driven, professional women from the limitations of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. She's basically the cheat code for getting out of your own way, showing up authentically, and living a life you're proud of.
And Kristeen is a medical educator and nephrologist who creates resources for doctors in training that I truly think are an unfair advantage. She makes complex topics super simple and takes the pain and uncertainty out of passing your medical exams. Kristeen and I connected a few years ago via our online platforms, and over the years we've discussed countless highs, lows, and in-betweens of doctor life. And in doing so, we've experienced firsthand the power of vulnerable conversations to show us where we're getting in our own way and underestimating our capacity.
So we want you to be part of the conversation and experience these same results. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. We are so happy as always to have you here. And we have a really fun episode today because on episode 48, we asked a question. We posed this question that came from Kristeen's brain. It was so brilliant. And in this episode, she is going to answer it. She's going to give us all the answers to this amazing question that she set her mind to in that episode. So episode 48, we titled it The Anti-Burnout Question that you need to ask. And this magic, amazing question is, what is a life that you don't need a holiday from? We really wanted you guys to sit and think about not just, designing your life in terms of what work you do or how much work you do or what kind of people you associate with, how much time you spend doing your hobbies, and then also your obligations, your housework, and so on, all these things. Not asking that question from what should I do? What does everybody else do? What's the right way to do it? What's praiseworthy? What's the best way to do it? And then even these questions that sound nice that aren't often particularly fruitful, like just do what you're passionate about. Do what you're passionate about and you'll never work a day in your life. Nice questions, but in our experience, and I know a lot of your experiences too, don't quite hit the spot. So this question of what would a life be that you don't need a holiday from, I thought from Kristeen was absolute magic. So we're in for a treat today because she has put her mind to work on this since that episode, and she's coming to us with all these incredible solutions. These solutions are obviously Kristeen specific. However, I personally love hearing all these solutions and options that other people offer in very specific ways, because sometimes there are so many things that I've never even thought about. It never even occurred to me that I could do that or choose that or have that. And that inspiration, that prompt from sharing these conversations with other people, I find so valuable. And I think another really key, awesome principle to come out of this episode is recognizing that there's so much power in focusing your mind in on a question or a principle or a value, giving yourself a bit of time, and you do that as you listen to these episodes. Every time you listen to an episode of this podcast and we give you some kind of challenging questions, some guiding values, some helpful belief system, and you just spend a bit of time letting your mind focus on that question or that prompt, that value, that principle, then it also lets your mind set off on that mode of being like, how am I going to integrate this in my life? What do I think about this? How can I use this? And so there's so much value in spending time listening to this podcast and spending time with the questions that we offer you, because once you've prompted it and you've set an intention, your mind can get to work in the background solving these problems. So Kristeen, please tell us all about what your mind has been doing over the last couple of weeks to answer this question of what is a life? How do you live a life that you don't need a holiday from?
I think, first of all, if you haven't listened to the last episode, you need to go and listen to that and then maybe even come back to that. That'll give you the full context. So I'll just give you a quick recap here. But long story short, I had been, burning the candle both ends, hyper productivity, pushing towards my goals, my ambitions, and all the things, but definitely to the expense of myself, where I was just too busy for my own good, and I was wondering how I was going to continue. And then, I guess, long story short, I hired someone that made me more busy, and then I just fell in a heap because I thought, what on earth is the answer here? If that wasn't the answer, I am completely lost as to the answer. And so I fell in a bit of a heap. But then from there, in addition to having asked this question, when I went off to the Gold Coast for 5 days to rejuvenate and then did not rejuvenate at all and felt just the same when I got back, it was time for a change. So the kind of combination of the two things happening sort of led me to this point where I guess I made the decision, like, this cannot continue. Like, I cannot keep living my life like this. And that doesn't mean that my ambitions have gone away, but it's like just setting that intention. It meant that I had changed the filter through which I passed decisions, through which I passed life. Like, everything had to go through this lens of, like, does this feel part of a life that I don't need a holiday from? Meaning, does it feel ease? Does it, like, easy, or not necessarily easy, because like that's not necessarily rewarding, but does it have an ease to it? Does it feel flowy and right? Does it feel fun? Like, does it feel like it's going to be part of that bigger picture? And if it doesn't, then how am I going to change it into something that is going to be part of that picture, or how am I going to leave it in the past? So it was it was more like, because I asked that question, the lens through which I was looking at the world just changed. And it was like my brain went to work behind the scenes, kind of without me, on its own, to try and bring me answers. And so although I did have a sort of a tough time that I had to push through, also in the background, even whilst I was going through that tough time, I was being shown these little moments of what is so beautiful about my life. I would be having these, what I would describe as rich life moments. And I don't mean that anything cost a lot of money, but I would just be more present in the moment I was in and just appreciating what I actually have. And it was so beautiful. And then coming out the other side of my little meltdown and processing all of that, that has just amplified so much. And so I feel like I am on the other side of that question. And I feel like I have now a new rule book for my life. And it's beautiful. And also, I guess what will be really interesting to talk about today is it's double-edged. So I've kind of made the sort of, I guess maybe not the conscious decision, because like I say, a lot of this was happening behind the scenes, but I'm now seeing the world in a different way. And I'm now putting myself above. I value myself more than I value my productivity, which sounds like an easy sentence or an easy concept, but I genuinely, for the longest time, and I'm sure lots of people listening can relate to this, my worth, my self-worth, and my sense of self-worth was tied up to, apart from all the societal things where people tell you have to be beautiful and thin, and we had all that going on. But on the academic side, it felt like the world also told me I had to be productive to be worth anything or valuable. So I was having trouble previously just relaxing. Like it's like I didn't know how. Like I forgot how. I don't know how. I wasn't giving myself space and time to just be. Like it was always like if I had a quiet moment, I had to be doing something. I couldn't just be. And so now on the other side of this, I'm finding I'm being a lot more. I'm just being, and I'm just like, I want to do more like joyful things. I've got back into like music and singing and all that stuff. I've I made candles the other day with my partner just for like a date night thing, bought all the stuff and just poured candles randomly. Never done that before. It was so fun. On the weekend, I did like a kind of a patio makeover thing. I mean, who even is she? I mean, like previously, a few months ago, I would have been like, I don't have time for that. Pouring candles. Like, no, I've got YouTube videos to make or whatever I would be doing. So it was like I wasn't giving myself permission to have this life that I'm now kind of thinking, well, this is where the joy is. And I think it's just a really interesting mindset shift where nothing's actually changed about my life, except it just feels so much better to live it. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I feel like there's some learning points. Maybe you can help me tease them out.
I'm so excited because I'm seeing so much of the Dare Darling Manifesto come out in this. And I'm going to link that down below the podcast. So the Dare Darling Manifesto is sort of like for all the Dare Darling members, it's our collective goal, the beliefs and the behaviors that we're working towards embodying, being an example of in our life. It's like it's our guiding principles. And the sweetest sentence is, I value myself. Hearing you say, I value myself, it feels like, to all of us, it should be a simple thing, right? And yet so many of us struggle with people pleasing and overworking and tying our productivity to our worth, tying how much money we make to our worth. And look, when we start to fail, or we start to come up against challenges like, oh, I need to stop this people-pleasing behavior, set some boundaries, suddenly we see how much that side of us that's required that says, I value myself, it's just not that strong. It's not as strong as we'd like to think it is. And you said, I've been having a rich life since these changes that you've made in your situation, your circumstances. And it's like your definition of a rich life has changed to now include taking care of yourself because you value yourself, doing the things that bring you joy because you value yourself. And I want this episode to scream from the rooftops as loud as possible for everybody else to hear, because I think it's a very common challenge for clinicians in particular. The training programs require so much self-sacrifice. Just the sheer hours, the extracurricular work that has to be done to get through, especially when things become more competitive, we get so, value in ourselves becomes irrelevant because we're so fixated on this goal. And so as much as it might sound simple and sound like, ideally it's something that we'd have as a default. If you want to tell me that you're somebody who values human beings, if you want to tell me you're a doctor who wants to improve people's lives and reduce suffering in the world, then you cannot ignore yourself in that equation. I can't accept that you're standing and telling me that you're somebody who wants to do that for other people because you value people, yet you don't count yourself in that equation. So I know this is very, very common challenge and incongruity for a lot of doctors. So I can't tell you how much hearing that sentence, I just value myself more, and coming to that epiphany just lights me up. And it ties in so beautifully to a couple of the other Dare Darling Manifesto lines of, I have something of value to contribute to the world, or something important to contribute to the world. Because it's that whole, your oxygen mask first thing. You soar over this challenging time. Like when you keep giving, over giving, and you end up depleting yourself, suddenly you actually can't give that important thing you have to contribute. And it's, I think for service-minded people, it takes us to get to that point where we've overgiven, where we overgave to the point that suddenly we weren't contributing as much. We weren't able to be hitting our potential to the point that we were creating so much goodness in the world because we weren't valuing ourselves. So I think this is often the process that we go through to get to, wait a second, I actually do value myself for lots of different reasons, not just what we contribute to others, but it's often a piece of that journey that we go through. And then another closely held belief in the manifesto is, in particular, I have strengths that I want to see affect the world for good. And I really think, you know, to maximize our strengths in the world, the principle it needs to come from is valuing yourself, because we know that unless your cup is full, you don't express those strengths fully. You don't express that special uniqueness, the particular combination that's you. You don't get to assert and express those strengths in the world. So it's this beautiful sort of ecosystem of, you know, needing to value yourself as much as you value other people in order to help the other people. And coming back to what I think is the first principle here, which is every single person matters. And if you want to say that, you can't exclude yourself. It's something that I want for everybody in the world. And I truly think that so few of us get to that point of being able to value ourselves, especially if we separate that from, I only value myself because I help other people. Can you just value yourself, as Kristeen's done here? And I know with Kristeen, it is tied to how she serves in the world. But, you know, these activities of choosing to create a life where you have more joy, and you have more peace, and you have more ease, to choose to give that to yourself is such a highly honorable, respectful thing for this human life that we live.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of golden goose analogy, isn't it? Like you say, if you want to be showing up in the world and contributing, or just showing up in a happy way that even affects your immediate loved ones in a nice way, then you do have to be kind of looking after yourself to some extent, right? You can't be letting your energy be so depleted. None of us are having a good day. We're snappy. We're not our best selves when we're depleted. So I think it's such a great compass for life. But I think something that's really interesting, even sitting here with this newfound new me who's thinking in this different way, there's this part of me that kind of thinks, well, because obviously the ambitious side is still there. Like you might decide, oh, I value myself enough, even without productivity and just for being, and I'm just enough. But then equally, you still want to achieve things in your life. And so are you self-sabotaging when you say, oh, actually, like, I'm just going to be today, and like, that's going to be okay, and everything else just falls out the window? Like, is that a form of self-sabotage, or is that something else?
My view on that, and this is kind of like, if I can just keep going along with the Dear Darling Manifesto, the whole Dear Darling Manifesto is about being unshakable. I talk about how you need to be grounded in liking yourself and the value of yourself, such that you can be unshaken by those external forces, like chiefly other people. And also what you learn as you learn more about yourself is the emotional experiences, in particular, the emotions that we want to avoid and fix, that shake us off of that grounded place of valuing ourselves and what's important to us. And one of the first lines is, it's important to me that I like myself. And I said that because I want people to take into account that we have desires and we have preferences, we have wants in the world, and I think they should be honored. Or I think it's a fun, enjoyable way to live your life, to follow those and honor those. And what I know about you is that you wouldn't probably like yourself or enjoy your life as much if you just became completely complacent. You know, that wouldn't be something that came from the belief of valuing yourself. Valuing yourself then leads on to you being like, what do I want? What's important to me? And then comes in all the patients you serve, all of your doctor humans that you serve. And so naturally it just flows on to you fulfilling all of these things you enjoy, which also often, you know, when you take away all the societal pressures, they often happen to be things that serve other people and have you connect with other people too. Because I think for humans, it's just something that's really fulfilling and enjoyable for us. So I don't worry about self-sabotage in this case when I hear somebody say, I value myself. I don't worry about self-sabotage. I worry about self-sabotage if, people are starting to say, oh, like I'm choosing this because it's just easier and that's too hard, essentially that kind of sentiment, or because I'm choosing to do this or to not do this because this could go really wrong, or I'm not sure that I'll succeed. That kind of dialogue. That kind of dialogue is saying, I'm worried about getting hurt. I'd like to protect myself. I'd like to avoid bad things happening. But what I'm hearing from you is, the balance of your human experience was largely like probably 80-90% stressful, to the point that you're like, I need to go and have a quick holiday to like have some peace. And you're sort of recalibrating to have those nice clean thirds of like, a third's going to be hard. A third of my life is going to be challenging emotions. A third is going to be pretty neutral. And then I also want a third to be happy and bright and joyful, spending more time with my partner, more time on my hobbies, more time on these things that just spark me joy. And you also mentioned the peace, that beautiful neutral place. So to me, I'm just hearing you balance out what sounded like it was, a bit of an off contrast before. And that's another thing that makes me, you even mentioned, you were like, it's not that I expect life to be easy all the time. That'd be another thing that makes me think you're self-sabotaging. Does that kind of help delineate why I'm not at all worried? I'm overjoyed when I hear you talk about this.
Yeah, and it totally resonates, because whenever I am very happy, I'll have these ideas and it'll be like, go and make a YouTube video on this or something like that. Like I'll have these ideas of inspiration when I'm at my happiest. And you're right, it is about serving other people ultimately. But I think the other thing that's key to this is there is a letting go. There's a letting go of, so it might not be your ultimate ambition or your ultimate, what you want for yourself or what you're naturally drawn to doing, but you might have to let go of, say, the timeline. Maybe not. The thing is, you don't know if the more stressy version of yourself was a total bottleneck to what you wanted anyway, and this more chill version is going to actually get you to that place. Like that's actually probably true, because your nervous system can hold more when you're relaxed. But I guess none of us really know that, and there's no guarantees anyway, no matter how much you work. But I feel like the timeline and letting go is important, even if it is true that whatever my ambition is, say it's, I don't know, say building a massive YouTube following or something like that, which is kind of like a vanity metric anyway, but I'm coming at it from a place where I'm impacting lots of people and helping people, if it's coming from that place. Then having a big following is a great thing. That takes time. Is it going to take longer because I'm now more chill? Like maybe, but it's okay because I choose this way, and it's got to be sustainable anyway. It's like if everything fell apart and I was no longer able to, if I just continued with that stressy version of myself, and I'm sure she'll make a comeback along the way, but just now she's gone for a minute. But if I'd continued on that path and not tried to reevaluate my life, there's a good chance I would have hacked off parts of my life that actually served me. Like I actually like being a doctor, but I've been so at risk of stopping clinical medicine to focus on my business for the longest amount of time. And just at this intersection, I'm actually feeling like I'm so happy in clinic because I'm so full of happiness the rest of the week. Everything's getting tended to just enough. And it feels a bit more like a balance, like you say. So it might just be a phase, but I'm hoping that this is how I'm going to be. I hope this is the new me. Yeah. And if this helps anyone.
Oh, I was just going to say, you brought up I think it's one of the most common thought errors that we have in our society. We're a very meritocratic society. I think it's sort of what schools, at least in Western society, have entrenched in us, this idea that success takes suffering. And we take it to these extremes of thinking like, if things feel easy, if I'm joyful, it's like I'm going to proportionally lose this much productivity because of my joy. Like talking about how, maybe if I take the accelerator pedal off and I'm not as stressed, then I'm not going to get as good results. Then you already suggested in there, as you were saying, that maybe my stress is the bottleneck. And I actually want to really strongly offer that I'm often highly suspicious that our stress is the bottleneck. The criticism and the pressure that we put ourselves under is the bottleneck. And I know that on a superficial level, this doesn't make sense, but you even just gave us a beautiful little example of when I am happy, I have more ideas and I'm motivated to work. You said that before. And we're just not used to believing that productivity comes from joy. But I think one of the most impactful mindset shifts we could all have, and I'm constantly trying to show my clients this with example after example after example about how productive positivity is. I am constantly trying to get back to a more positive mindset from my scarce, fear-based human brain, because, yeah, it feels good, but primarily because I'm like, I've got stuff to do, I've got things I want to achieve, and being in a positive mindset, being joyful helps me do that, as opposed to trying to use tactics of putting myself under deadlines and pressure and da-da-da. I don't use that anymore. I don't look at what's not going well when I want to turn the dial up, when I want to put the accelerator on. I get into a positive mode. So if you guys could take anything away from this episode, I would love for you to take those sentiments from Kristeen's experience, which is, as she adds more joy into her life, it's not actually at the cost of productivity. That's just a thought error that we've picked up, and then we've used confirmation bias over the years to affirm that. But actually, look at the examples of when you felt your best in your life and ask yourself if you are more productive then, if you had better outputs then, or if it was the times that you were super stressed out, were you more productive then?
It's actually funny to think back. I'm like, have I ever done anything peacefully? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know if I've ever done anything peacefully. But even as you said that, I was like, actually, when you think about objectively the metrics, if you want to talk metrics, like they are, they haven't changed or they're better. Like, and I'm more chill. So that's only a couple of weeks. But what you're saying is true. But it's like everything you were taught, and especially for doctors, because everything, your exams from high school, then the med school, then the training, like everything is like the expectation is that this is going to feel bad and hard, and it does.
Yeah, every time you did it, every time you were successful, it was hard, right? That's the only data set you've got, but it's only because you were forced to overwork because of some preset curriculum or working hours or whatever. But we haven't got a good data set for what if I did this in a way that felt good to me on my timeline.
Exactly. And so although there are limitations in training programs and things like that, we're not for a minute saying that, I mean, you make decisions, but I guess it's just really interesting to have closed the loop on that question for myself in terms of how do I live a life that I don't need a holiday from. I feel like the last couple of weeks I've been living that, which is I'm so grateful for. And I guess it's just really lovely to share the journey before, during, and after. And if it inspires anyone or you can see yourself in this story, like I guess I just really want to share it with you in case it does help you in any way. And maybe you, like me, could try living life from a different lens. It's literally just a filter. It's just a new way to get up in the morning and say, right, how are we going to do the same thing, but so that I don't want to run away from it, basically.
And I think just another thing you brought up here is a really excellent guiding principle is, a life that we don't need a holiday from isn't a life where you're happy all the time, where you're excited or ecstatic, overjoyed all the time. But what you really did was you just had more of an emotional balance in your life. And I think there's nothing that marks a full human experience, like a full life lived, more than being able to experience that full emotional spectrum. And so many clinicians are so used to living on that negative end of the spectrum with this kind of low level anxiety and this pressure and this stress that kind of always sits there. And that of course builds up over time, and then you desperately need a holiday with that grumbling in the background. But we're often afraid to add more of those neutral, peaceful, calm emotions, let alone the positive emotions, into our life, because they feel scary. It feels like, there's a vulnerability to allowing yourself to enjoy. And then we have this common experience of thinking, oh, the rug's going to be pulled out from me any moment. I might just be delusional, But that might just be the thing that you need to troubleshoot, to work out how to allow yourself to have more of an emotional spectrum so that you can live a life you don't need to have a holiday from. That might require some situation changes like Kristeen did, or it might require some mindset changes, letting yourself appreciate what you've got, stop withholding positive thoughts and emotions till when you, quote, deserve them or you've earned them, when you're a consultant or when you're retired. Goodness gracious. So just really good to reflect on, do you have that nice thirds balance of all the emotions, the good, the bad, the neutral in your life?
Yep. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for another really illuminating conversation, Becc. I just love unpacking things with you. Thank you to everyone who's listening. We just want you to have the best week, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in